Donald Trump and the United States government has proposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico, among other countries. They have brought up a number of issues to explain the imposition of these tariffs. For Canada, these include border security, trade imbalance, and not living up to native commitments. Several of Canada's politicians have indicated that we need to fight back and show that Canada is strong. Almost always they suggest that in order to appear strong, we need to impose tough, retaliatory tariffs against the United States. However, is this really the type of strength that the United States is looking for from Canada? Why tariffs? Firstly, I believe that there are much better ways other than tariffs to sway Canada to implement the kinds of changes that the United States administration is looking for. Logically, in order to address an issue, you need to identify it and then come up with a plan of action. In this case, you want both the United States and Canada to be on the same page. You want to make sure that the solutions address the needs of both countries. Donald Trump, above all, is a businessman. He is using tariffs as a means to achieve what he wants. The short timeline between verbally stating what he wants and the imposition of tariffs has not given countries an adequate amount of time to formulate a complete solution. I believe this was intentional, the introduction of a hammer to move things as quickly as possible. However, as most Canadians and many Americans, I believe that this was not the best course of action for countries that depend on each other. In order for North America to function the most efficiently and have affordable products, we need to reduce red tape and barriers. Tariffs move in the opposite direction. Unfortunately, it also has the effect of eroding trust between countries. It uses the economy as a weapon where the same goals could be achieved by working together. Through the eyes of the United States administration, achieving their desired goals is worth this expense to both Canadians and Americans. I also believe that President Trump and his administration really want a win on this portfolio. And they don't just want a small win. They want to be able to say, look at this great problem we've solved. Look at what we've accomplished, something that no one else has been able to achieve. I also believe that this is why they have been very vague on the exact nature of the issues. They will be able to claim victory on this endeavor whenever they deem that it is no longer enough of a problem. So what is the current Canadian response? So far, the response from Canada, even before the details of the tariffs were released, has varied from waiting to see what happens to meeting with United States officials to a strong dollar-for-dollar tariff response. Certain Canadian representatives, including Alberta's Premier Daniel Smith, as well as other premiers, have met or discussed economic consequences with U.S. officials. There have also been considerable posts and interviews from Canadian politicians exclaiming how we need to be strong and fight back with counter-tariffs. There's been a lot of speculation in the Canadian and U.S. media about the true nature of the reason for tariffs. This is because Donald Trump has given a number of reasons over the past 2 months for justifying the need for tariffs. This includes weak border security, an imbalance on the trade between Canada and the United States, and Canada not fulfilling NATO commitments. Logically, it's difficult to change the imbalance of trade. This is because the United States has 9 times the population of Canada, and its economy is 10 times larger. Obviously, the United States has much greater purchasing power, which largely leads to the imbalance. Also, when you consider services purchased and not just products, the trade imbalance is much less between the two countries. As a result of this, Canada has focused on working towards solutions to improve border security with the United States. There's already been some actions by certain provinces such as Alberta to improve border security by implementing additional personnel and resources. There has also been discussion about increasing the timeline of the ramp up to 2% of Canada's GDP contribution to NATO. This currently sits as 2032. So what is the strength that the United States is looking for from Canada? Much of the discussion around how to appease the United States and make changes that will satisfy their demands has centered around showing that Canada can reply with a strong response. However, I believe that this is only part of what the United States is looking for in a strong ally. The response addresses one effect of the problem, the tariffs, but not the cause of the problems. In the eyes of the United States administration, Canada has not properly addressed the problems that the United States has identified, although vaguely. They have left it for Canada to read between the lines. I believe that this was intentional so that they could reduce or increase tariffs depending on Canada's response and without identifying specific actions. They see Canada as far too lax in the area of border security. It has not put enough resources into addressing illegal crime and drug smuggling, border crossings. They feel, and with some evidence, that Canada is an easy place for crime organizations from countries such as China and South America to set up operations and make and distribute illegal drugs. The extent of these problems, at least relative to what's happening at the southern U.S. border, has been exaggerated. However, again, looking at Donald Trump as a businessman, this is his method of operation. We should also remember that, as far as the border is concerned, the problem is in both directions. We have also seen thousands of people crossing into Canada from the United States, especially during crackdown threats on illegal immigrants during Donald Trump's first administration. Canada has also seen numerous illegal weapons crossing the border from the United States into Canada for decades. Although the methods of the current U.S. administration are highly questionable, resulting actions would make both countries safer. The U.S. feels that over the past decade that Canada's open-door policy for immigrants has let people with bad intentions into Canada. They feel that these criminals then use Canada as a gateway into the United States. They have stated that our screening processes for new immigrants and individuals receiving visas is not strict enough. Putting the numerous comments from the United States administration over the past month together, it seems that what they really want is for Canada to address these issues and improve our regulations and security processes. This is to minimize illegal activity within the borders of Canada. They feel that this will reduce the number of harmful drugs and individuals entering the United States from Canada. So yes, Canada can and should respond with counter tariffs if tariffs are imposed. However, this only addresses the consequences of the real problem in the eyes of the United States. The tariffs are a means to an end that should be addressed through diplomacy and working together with Canada. However, counter tariffs are not what is going to cause the United States to remove their tariffs. Addressing the underlying issues of border security, tackling criminal operations, better screening of people entering the country, and meeting NATO commitments are the answers. We also have to look at what has weakened Canada relative to the United States. Canada has made itself extremely vulnerable to actions like tariffs from the United States. Over the past decade, Canadian federal regulation has made it increasingly difficult to implement projects, especially large, expensive projects. The government has put in red tape, including entire bills preventing development. Most of these were rooted in environmental concerns. However, most of the stated environmental benefits have not manifested. Projects and work has still occurred, but not in Canada. This work has just been transferred to other countries. Due to the years of changing regulations, uncertain future requirements, and additional potential taxes, Canada has discouraged investment in its industries. This has led to a decrease in productivity, reduced investment in current businesses, and an unfavorable environment for new projects and research and development relative to the United States. This has pushed Canada far down on the list of the countries that are beneficial for business investment compared to where it was 10 years ago. In Canada, we now see much more expensive housing and mortgage rates, and more expensive grocery and utility bills relative to other developed countries. This makes our citizens even more vulnerable to additional price increases that potential counter tariffs would introduce. Cost of living expenses that have been brought about by the Canadian carbon taxes will be mirrored by the cost of increase of U.S. goods via counter tariffs. However, it will be at an even higher level for goods where the tariff applies. Fortunately, there are still a large number of goods that are produced locally that have no or limited reliance on U.S. inputs. This will help diminish the effects of counter tariffs in the short term. Canadians could still be hit hard for certain items like produce, especially over winter months. What the U.S. administration really wants is better regulation in Canada to address criminal organizations and individuals with harmful intentions. Their viewpoint is that if Canada reduces crime within the country and at its borders, it will also make the United States a safer place. For the past decade, the U.S. has seen Canada becoming increasingly lax on these issues and are looking for a strong concerted effort from Canadian governments. This is the real Canadian strength that the U.S. is looking for, not counter tariffs. They want Canada to address the source of the problems. Hopefully, the governments of the two countries will be able to come to an agreement within the next few months. Hopefully, resolution can occur before the most severe effects of the tariffs start to kick in. It is interesting to ponder whether or not we would still be facing tariffs if Canada had addressed some of these issues more thoroughly over the past several years. If the Canadian government had done a more thorough analysis of the effects of its restrictive development policies, we would be more diversified and able to tap into more markets around the world. We have depended on the United States to such a large extent that we are not even self-sufficient for our energy needs. This is considering the enormous supply of Canadian oil and gas. Much of the oil that Eastern Canada depends on is from Canadian pipelines that go through the United States. This is because we have not built east-to-west pipeline corridors. Even if we were still facing tariffs, if Canada had improved border security, met its NATO commitments, done a better job at cracking down on illegal drug operations, and had implemented more balanced development regulations, we would see a much better starting place to address the demands from the United States.